Our sneak preview of summer has come to an end for like 2 days, and it's supposed to actually get warm again. I might actually have to put the heat back on. New England, ladies and gentlemen. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay, and it's time for me to be the voice of reason when it comes to a couple of different things here. Some of it involves the pandemic, some of it involves a few other things, but it's time to be the person that actually thinks things through with regards to some very critical things that have been going on. So it's going to be a really simple discussion tonight. Most of what I'm going to do is actually, I'm in between movie marathons. I finished the Predator box set, and I actually have some Blu-rays that have come in. So the order that was lost last time, I'll say, USPS says it was stolen, but I just basically I'm going to say it's cargo loss. That order, the vendor involved in that order was like, hey, place another order, you know, we'll do the A to Z guarantee and send another one. So I made sure, since they were all cordial about it, to order even more from this Amazon vendor. So this Amazon marketplace vendor. It's some bookstore out in Utah. And so I set a few things up to where I watched the delivery time more closely. The Postal Service demanded that the mail carrier actually hand off the thing to me directly. So I wonder if I could have gotten one of those cards that said, hey, come pick this up at the post office, blah, blah, blah. You know, I wonder if they even still do that, because it's not that big of a deal for me to go to the post office. I'm fully vaccinated, and I'll wear a mask even though I'm fully vaccinated if they're still requiring masks. It's not the end of the world if I have to go to the post office to not have to worry about porch pirates. The thing is, though, I'm kind of surprised porch pirate crap isn't more of a thing in this area, because this is mostly a USPS thing that I've had problems with. I've had far riskier things with private couriers, and you know, the stuff didn't get stolen. So I really don't know at this point. I might have to rethink a few things with Amazon Prime and some of the other stuff, or maybe just get a gigantic mailbox that locks when you close it or something. I have like a big lockbox or something. Switch out the mailbox on the side of the house with one that's big enough to hold some small packages if I'm going to keep buying movies or something along those lines. So yeah, Dollhouse seasons 1 and 2. This was the competing show. This was the competing show to Lie to Me back in 2009, 2010. Seen a couple of these on Fox On Demand, but never actually saw the coherent story from start to finish like I did with Lie to Me back in the day. Fox On Demand, in much simpler times when it comes to streaming and online media, was an environment where the shows would air on TV first, and then a day or two later, Fox would start streaming replays of the shows. So you were always a couple of days behind. But if you didn't talk to anybody about what was on TV or anything, and you didn't get too nosy on social media, it wasn't the end of the world if you were somebody that didn't have cable service to just watch everything via a streaming service. And this was back in 2009, 2010, obviously ahead of the times versus what we have nowadays, with everybody and their mother's uncle trying to start a plus streaming service. Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, ESPN Plus, Paramount Plus, whatever. So yes, these came in, and because the bookstore was such a good sport with regards to the order that got lost and processed the refund on it anyways, even though it was a courier issue, I actually decided to place an even a bigger order because of that, just to be courteous. So I picked up a Blu-ray version of First Night. This is obviously Experience High Definition. This is obviously a format war Blu-ray movie, but it's basically an upgrade from the DVD version that I've had around for a while that I saw at Walmart one day, and I was like, is that Sean Connery in a medieval movie? So similar to Kingdom of Heaven, but not as much of an emphasis on the Crusades and stuff. This is more tied into Camelot and the Arthurian legend, but something about these historical movies I've always found kind of cool and whatnot. So a couple of decisions with regards to the Blu-ray DVD thing. Some people talk about whether you should split your Blu-rays and DVDs apart on the shelves, because, I mean, it's content either way. So, for me, there's a chronological element to the DVD era versus the Blu-ray era for me. There was a cutoff point when Blu-ray became more of a thing, where I started only getting DVDs if a Blu-ray wasn't available. But I have a lot of DVD movies that I probably get nostalgic for the DVD presentation of those movies, because we're going back to when I first got out on my own, you know, I was younger, all kinds of other stuff like that. So there's an element of nostalgia to watching certain DVDs for me. So I'm actually going to eventually redo everything on the shelves. Right now you see games in the back. I'm probably going to flip the games I'm going to flip the games with the movies and use those two big shelves you see back there for movies instead. And we'll put the Blu-ray in one part and the DVDs in another part as well. So Blu-ray, DVD, there's got to be a lot of overlap anyway. So when it comes to whether I want something that looks better or something that is more in line with, back in the 2000s, the way things used to be, or nerding it out and comparing upscale DVD to Blu-ray, I want to be able to find the material more easily among its specific genres and stuff. So it's a nerd decision for me. I realize a lot of people that have expanded from DVD to Blu-ray have had to make this decision as to keep them separate or put them together. My decision is to basically keep them separate. I've been looking at eye candy on Blu-ray for over 10 years now. So keeping them separate in their own section for the high-def stuff and then having the DVDs for retro type stuff or stuff that never made it out onto Blu-ray is definitely something I can get behind. But I have to rearrange everything with the cabinets and everything now, put the games somewhere else. Then we'll set up the movies and whatnot in the more expandable shelf, because I actually plan on those two shelves back there becoming something bigger. I'm actually thinking of buying some bigger shelves. Then you got to figure out what to do with the old ones and converting bookshelves into media shelves over in the bedroom. It's going to be a project. But if I'm going to get back into physical media, I'm going to run out of shelf space pretty quickly, because I already had everything about 2/3 full between the games and the movies. So yeah, so anyways, it was cool doing business with this bookstore out in Utah that still had Dollhouse on Blu-ray from 10 years ago. So made sure to pick up a copy of First Night to go along with it. Already seen this movie before. I've never seen it on Blu-ray. It's a special edition, so I don't know if it's like a director's cut or something, but I might just might watch both of them just for the heck of it. Tried to get rid of this DVD a couple of years ago too, but it was too scratched, so the vendor wouldn't take it. Either way. Yep, First Night on Blu-ray. All right, let's get into some discussions about, eventually leading up to our main discussion tonight, Never Wear Your Heart on Your Social Media, which is a parody of Never Wear Your Heart on Your Sleeve. In other words, don't be overly emotional. Don't be overly emotional. Don't put all your cards on the table, and, don't make big things out of things. I mean, I actually ran into somebody on Twitter earlier who was bragging about how much she blocked people. And I like blocking people. I like blocking people. Twitch partner, about 100-something concurrence. And I was like, okay, I'll just block you instead. You've never said anything to me. You've never said anything to me. And now you're not going to say anything to me, because you go around bragging about how you love blocking people. I probably don't want to associate with you anyways. All right. People sometimes. This ties into, unfortunately, people's misunderstandings of social media. Even as it has evolved and stuff, there's some bad habits that just won't go away. And one of them is, this is something I talked about back in 2012. Social media is not a tax form. Just because there's fields for this, and this, doesn't mean you have to fill everything in. You don't have to type all of your every last detail about you, if it's not required, into a social media site. And you don't need to have every single opinion you have about everything out there on the internet. You are still an individual with the right to privacy. If you want to keep things off of the internet and not talk about stuff on the internet, it is a perfectly normal and human behavior to do so. It's just, I say this in response to this cage stage, as some people call it. There's this phase that I know YouTubers went through it, I went through it, now Twitch streamers are going through it, younger platform with younger people on it, people that aren't as experienced in online media, but there's this phase that you probably are going to go through at some point if you get into online media and content creation, where you're going to just literally make videos or streams about anything, and you're going to think it's never going to reflect on you, and you're going to be wrong. People are going to form opinions on you based on your videos, based on your streams, based on, in today's day and age, your TikToks. No matter what it is that you make, the details about yourself that you have in the stuff that you make is going to affect people. People have opinions. Some are going to think you're right. Some are going to think you're wrong. And if you talk about being a large content creator, becoming a huge streamer, or a huge YouTuber, what do you need in order to do that? You need common ground with as many people as possible. And the easiest way to do that is to stay very, very focused and not introduce details that might cause certain members of your audience to walk away. So let's take, for example, the Northeast United States. The Northeast United States baseball rivalry here in New England, known as Red Sox versus Yankees. The Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. Big sports rivalry here in the Northeast. If you want a huge audience in New England and the New York area, you may not want to mention that you're a Red Sox fan or a Yankees fan because you will alienate the other fan base. See what I mean? You got all these people out there, they want to be these big streamers, these big YouTubers, and they're like pouring out their soul on their streams and videos and then wondering why they don't have as big of an audience. Yeah, well, you put all your cards on the table, everybody can see all your cards, make decisions based on it, but most importantly, you didn't decide that certain things are more important to what it is that you're doing than others. You know, I think back to, there's actually something if you learn about certain Christian traditions like Calvinism. One of the differences among, between the Lutherans in the German Reformation and the Swiss Reformation involving the Calvinists and the English Reformation, which involved what eventually became the Anglicans. Today you got the Anglicans and the Episcopal Church here in the United States. You learn about the different Reformation traditions, and one of the things you have to run into, one of the things you encounter is what to do about certain ways that certain churches want to do things. And there's a saying you will run into. I saw it on the Ligoniers website. Haven't been on there in a very, very, very long time because I'm not a Calvinist. But there's this saying which I think could be that can be applied in a secular context with making stuff on the internet. In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. In all things, charity. The historical context of this idea is that the so-called Reformed Christian traditions include everything from Swiss Calvinists to the Church of England and stuff like that as well. You have all different kinds of ways of doing things. How do you define what's important, what's worth arguing over, and what's worth, agreeing to disagree on? So let me give you a couple of examples. How about the idea of how a church is run? Multiple different traditions are represented under the Reformation in various areas. You have Congregationalists, which if you're from New England, you may have seen some scenic congregational churches. Very nice old, usually historic buildings, little white meeting house thingies, or big ones with bell towers and stuff like that. But there's an idea that, hey, the congregation should be running things for the most part. Now switch over. Okay, a church has a pastor, so you have a minister running a place. Or how about a combination of a minister with lay leaders of some sort? So now you have some emphasis on someone running the place locally. Then you continue on over, you have alterations on that. What if you have elders instead of one minister? So now do you have one person or do you have a whole bunch of people that the congregation puts together? It's all organizational stuff. And then eventually you work your way up to the idea that if you don't have a bishop, you don't have a church. So the Anglicans are huge on that from what I've read over the years. So you have at least 4 different ways of running what is essentially a local religious establishment. How do you decide what do you argue about? What do you agree to disagree on? How you handle all of it, etc. And that's where you get sayings like, in essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. In all things, charity. Now let's take that into a more secular context. There are certain things that are deal breakers that you absolutely want to agree with, maybe someone you're collabing with, or you want certain people in your audience, demographics, things along those lines. There are certain things that are absolutely important and critical that you will want to agree on or you're not going to get anywhere. For the other stuff, if it's not one of those, you have to think about what exactly... if it's not so important, then relax, take a chill pill, and understand where the other person's coming from that disagrees with you on something. But in all things, no matter what, you want to put the best construction on things. You want to articulate why something is so important to you that it's a deal breaker, and certain people can't be your friend because of that. And in the other stuff, you have to be mellow and chill and not go into, you will agree with me, it's my way or the highway, or we can't be friends. So, just the complexity of human relationships. But these kinds of things kind of get me thinking about, sayings like that and whatnot. Which gets the old gears turning when it comes to some things that I've had to deal with recently. So let's talk about the pandemic. I unfortunately got some messages from my dad tonight that indicates that he's taken the side of the COVIDiots in my family. I was the one that went out and got vaccinated, and I went out and got the vaccines first chance I got. But he's like, hey, I'm retired. I'm not hanging out with a lot of people, I think I'll be fine. Problem is, and I'm going to be the voice of reason here with this sort of thing. This summer is going to be interesting. And everything very heavily depends on what kinds of friends you have. When I was growing up, whether it was people in my school or people in certain families or something along those lines, there was a conversation that parents would have with their kids about choose your friends wisely. Don't get caught up with the wrong crowd. If you have the wrong friends, bad things could happen to you because of the friends that you have. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about that with the arguments that take place on the internet about the progress of the vaccine, COVID-19, this, that, or the other, CDC guidance, This got old a long time ago, and I've about had it with all the arguments that I run into on a daily basis in so many comment sections from people with this sort of thing. It's just, this got old a long time ago. But I want to be the voice of reason. I want to be the voice of reason when it comes to what's happening this summer. Because I come across as extremely paranoid, because of what's going to happen. Here's the issue. What we have right now, and I think a lot of you would agree with me, the environment we have right now because of the pandemic is not normal. The business shutdowns, the limitations on businesses, the mask mandates, 24-hour businesses no longer being 24 hours because there's a shift where the stores get restocked and sanitized. All of these things we've done over the past year and a half or so, all of these things, let's face it, they're not normal. It's not the way we'd normally run things. There's a lot of things that are going on right now very specifically because this thing's been going around. So, lest we forget, as the government and the politicians and whatnot continue to announce the progress that the vaccine is making with regards to this thing, as they, for example, in Connecticut, mask mandates are being revisited, certain industries are relaxing mask guidelines, and I can already mask guidelines. Why is that such a hard thing to say? I don't know. Cold ones. And I can tell you that already at Walmart in my neck of the woods, the masks are off. So the policy is that fully vaccinated people don't need masks. But what I'm seeing from Walmart so far is they're putting more of an emphasis on they're putting more of an emphasis on their employees than on customers. Because do you really want to risk ticking off customers, asking them if they're vaccinated or not? So let's be blunt here. There's a lot of things that are going to change as people sound what sounds like an all clear. Oh, we can get back to normal, blah, 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 relax things. So I don't think we're out of the woods. Call me paranoid all you want, but I don't think we're out of the woods on this. Here's the thing. You have all the extra sanitation, all the extra hand wipes and stuff. You have all the extra hand sanitizer that's available. You have the stores closing down and cleaning the place and restocking on a graveyard shift that's sometimes very hard to staff up. You have all this stuff that's been going on this pandemic specific. As people feel that we can move beyond all of this, that goes away. And then what? Masks gone. Social distancing gone. The extra cleaning and sanitizing of surfaces gone. What kind of environment do you think that's going to create if you don't have your shots yet? So the numbers are dropping because the vaccine's making the rounds. One of the things you can look at without being a giant numbers nerd about the efficacy of the vaccines, look at how the news coverage has changed as the vaccine has made the rounds. Mentioned this on Twitter. About a year ago, people were getting some ruffled eyebrows because people were upset because it's a rather morbid thing. Because people were out there referring to COVID as the boomer remover. Because it was, oh, it's an old people's disease. You look at Spring Break 2020. People are like, I'm young. What do I have to care? And then some people found out the hard way that, you don't know who has this thing and you don't know what this thing's going to do to you if you get it. Those two rules that I've had the entire time this has been going on. So a year ago, people found out about and the whole thing. Oh yeah, it's old people are the big issue. Da 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 da. And then things turned out it wasn't. Turns out no, that wasn't the case. So in Connecticut we had a very simple vaccination rollout thing. Eventually the governor simplified it. I ranted about it a while back because essential workers lost their place in line before the ramp up in supply eventually led to the point being rendered moot. So thank you, President Biden and Washington, for making up for my state's little mistake. That legit ticked off a lot of people, even as school teachers were able to get vaccinated in early March. So yeah, that was a thing, but it was very quickly rendered no longer a thing thanks to some outside influence from Washington. Thank you, President Biden. But first it was an old people thing. Then we started, the vaccine went to the most vulnerable folks in long-term care facilities, et cetera, et cetera. Then we started hearing about middle-aged people being the ones in the hospital. There was that actor who lost limbs, then eventually succumbed to the disease. There's all this stuff that went on. There's a middle-aged thing then. Then, the age groups got lower and lower as people got their shots. Then you look around today, and you're finding it's younger people and the unvaccinated who are ending up with these serious cases. Now, as that becomes more of the thing that folks in the healthcare industry are seeing, and as businesses revert back to more normal ways of doing things, masks, who cares? That kind of stuff. Sanitation, back off on it, cut costs, whatever. When all of this gets relaxed, it's going to be a very different environment if you don't have your shots yet. And so this is what I'm trying to tell my dad. Whether he wants to do anything with it is entirely on him. But the world we have right now is still very much the bubble that we've created for ourselves with all these extra precautions we've been doing throughout the pandemic. So you get to a situation where people are unethical and they lie about being vaccinated so they don't have to wear a mask. Then they find out the hard way, whoops, they aren't. Then what? So, yeah, I want to be the voice of reason. It's tempting to think that we're where we are because of what's been going on and whatnot, but some of what's going on is stuff that we've gotten used to. Elements of social distancing, mask mandates, extra sanitation. What happens when you remove all of that? That's the big question. So as always, proceed with caution. Somebody had to be the voice of reason on this. Why not let it be me? And now we come to the main discussion, which ties in, believe it or not, to this pandemic stuff, because it was actually an anti-vaxxer arguing on the internet earlier in my day that got me thinking about this, and then I stumbled upon this on Facebook. So, let me just give you an idea. My day began with somebody lying about the number of kids they had in order to argue on the internet. So, some people may be taken aback by some of the things I post on Twitter, but the truth of the matter is I'm a technology guy. I'm aware of what technology certain platforms have. So, one of the things that I do, of course, with YouTube versus Twitch and whatnot, is compare the technology square the technology off against each other. Compare the technology, feature parity, and stuff like that. There was a discussion recently about Dr. Disrespect meeting with Fwiz, Mr. Fwiz, about how YouTube does streaming. that should be interesting, but that's not the subject we want to talk about tonight. The thing is, I'm a tech guy. I do a lot of comparisons of the technology that these platforms are rolling out, whether it's YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Imager, TikTok, etc. And the technology that these platforms decide to have is part of how they run their platform. So on Twitter, the fact that tweets are not threaded to the point where delete the original discussion and all the reactions go away, that's part of Twitter's design and how Twitter has chosen to run their platform. And the presence of advanced search and the fact that it's possible to pick up the breadcrumbs that somebody deleted a tweet, that's all part of Twitter's design. That's all part of how Twitter has decided to run their platform. So, when you can keyword search with advanced search and learn a lot about somebody who's given you some hunches that they're like this or they're like that, that's not anything bizarre or unusual or anything. It's just a feature of the website. It's a feature of the platform. It's something that the public has access to. And as a content creator, you need to be thinking about how you come across to others, even through obscure, nerdy stuff like advanced search on Twitter. I can tell you, it's interesting when I know about some of the technology on these platforms. It's a whole nother ballpark when I find out the hard way about something I didn't know about. So my day began with someone lying about the number of kids they had in order to be an anti-vaxxer and do a huge rant on Facebook and big argument and stuff. The reason why I know they're lying is because I can't believe how many people don't understand this. It's a thing on YouTube, it's a thing on Twitter, it's a thing on Facebook, it's a thing on a lot of different places where you can post comments and things along those lines. It only takes a couple of clicks to check the credibility of somebody saying something to you. So you can see, someone's a sock puppet. It's just a blank picture with nothing, and they're just using it to argue on the internet. Or it's somebody with a sock puppet YouTube channel with no videos. Or it's this, or it's that, or da-da-da. Or they leave these kinds of comments, so little wonder they're being toxic to me, blah, 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 blah. It's amazing, though, how people don't realize just how easy it is to check the credibility of somebody who's arguing with them. So when you tell me that you have a certain number of kids, but you have family portraits publicly shared that are only a click or two away that show more kids than what you're saying, I gotta wonder about you. Yes. Look, I'm not going to be surprised by it. This is people in the general public we're talking about. There are weird things going on in this world. There's individuals that have weird relationships with other people. There's people that are into bizarre stuff that I'll never be into in a million years. And of course, how can we forget that classic rule? If you can think it, someone out there is probably trying to do it, no matter how messed up it is. It's a sad reality of the world we live in. So I'm not surprised that somebody is so fanatically focused on arguing that they actually lie to people about how many kids they have just to argue. When you can see family portraits in just 2 clicks that show that they're lying. And I just feel sorry for those kids that are the invisible ones or the scapegoats or whatnot. Because I know with some narcissistic parents, the selfishness of the parents pits the kids against each other and exacerbates things like sibling rivalries and things along those lines. This is where you get into things like the golden child, that person, the mom's favorite or dad's favorite or whatever, the person who can do no wrong, the invisible one, the one that nobody seems to acknowledge as part of the family, the scapegoat who's, oh, you can't ever do anything right, blah, 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 blah. It's a thing. It's a family thing. You may be dealing with siblings, parents, in-laws, what have you. So it's just people for you. But feel sorry for the kids that, in the name of arguing on the internet, weren't acknowledged. But it was while dealing with this little thing I ran into that I happened to stumble upon something extremely important on Facebook. So, Facebook as Facebook has expanded beyond just places to put updates and stuff, Facebook, as it has done things like Facebook gaming and things like that, has created an ecosystem for business pages, which is how Facebook gaming runs, by the way. You create a gaming video creator page to have a Facebook presence as a streamer. So, because of the public-facing nature of businesses versus personal pages, I actually found out, I don't know how long this has been the case, but some people I think are going to find out the hard way when it starts negatively affecting them. Public-facing business pages can have the comments publicly visible without someone needing to have an account. And it can start getting picked up by search engines. So these people that are ranting and raving about local businesses and having little meltdowns in comments on like local news media's story posts on Facebook, that stuff is publicly visible without even needing a Facebook account. At what point does it start getting picked up on by background check services, people doing background checks to hire you or something? Things along those lines. At what point do we start seeing these people that have made a little sport out of ranting and raving and starting fights on Facebook everywhere they go being affected by this? This is something that even I had to stumble upon because this isn't the sort of thing I really pay much attention to. But when I say don't wear your heart on your social media, it's a parody of don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Not everything that is posted on the internet needs your response or needs you to say anything. There are elements like blocking, reporting, things like that. There are tools that platforms give you to deal with bad actors. You can use those tools and not need to respond to somebody who's pestering you. Because there are times when if you do respond, it makes it worse. I'm just curious, these people who don't understand the technology that have made a little sport out of arguing about every tiny little thing they can on Facebook, on business pages, mostly local news and stuff. So there's some politician they don't like, and they can now show up in the comments on a Facebook page, even to people who don't have Facebook accounts. You know, once upon a time, if you try to access something on Facebook through like a neutral browser or something without having an account, you get bounced over to create an account or log in. But apparently somewhere along the line, on the business side of things, since businesses are public facing and there's a public element to things like Facebook gaming and stuff, somewhere along the line that changed for business pages. So these people having these little internet fights and whatnot, on Facebook, I'm curious how many of them are going to find out the hard way that it's making them look really bad, even to people who don't have Facebook accounts. They go to get a job somewhere, for example, and the HR is tech savvy. Whoops. Let's look at local media and stuff, or let something pings in a background check or something, because this stuff can be viewed without an account. So can the robots get at it? Can, background check services get at it? Can you find out before you hire somebody that they have little meltdowns on Facebook in local news article comment sections or something like that? So you can attach like a geographic thing sort of to what it is that they're doing and kind of follow up on it and say, oh yeah, we shouldn't hire that person. They're a real hot potato. Social media, ladies and gentlemen. 8 years ago in 2012, actually 9 years ago now, still stuck in 2020 mode. Many years ago, I talked about it's not a tax form. You don't need to have every little detail about yourself on social media. What if it's a privacy issue? What if there's an issue with the website? Or in the case of what happened with Facebook numerous times over and over and over again, they rolled out new features and they defaulted to the lowest privacy settings. One of the most infamous ones that I remember was a gigantic cell phone number leak where there was something that was being rolled out for showing your friends' phone numbers. There was something that's being rolled out for showing your friends, quote unquote, phone numbers. And they defaulted to public. So there were all kinds of people I was seeing on Facebook that were complaining about their phone numbers have been leaked. And now they're getting spam calls, robocalls. They had to buy new SIM cards. If they still had landline service back then, they had to call to get their number changed, pay some fees, blah, 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 blah. And I've seen other stuff too where, you know, Facebook has never been something I've really wanted to grow on as a form of social media, as building a brand and blah, 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 blah. It's never been something I wanted to be anything big on. It's just some personal thing because I've got some folks from college, high school, the family, etc., who use Facebook. And that's really the only reason I even have anything to do with Facebook either these days. It's personal social media because some old folks in my family talk on Facebook. That's it. Not interested in doing much of anything with it anymore. Wouldn't even be on it if it wasn't for that. But here we go again, though. When I found out about this with these, because I have gotten, I've mentioned this before in previous streams, I had gotten sick. I had gotten very, very sick of how my Facebook experience has been all but ruined by all these people wanting to have humongous arguments about everything. Politics, the COVID vaccine, the pandemic, blah, 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 blah. I mean, Twitter can get pretty bad, but Facebook, man, local Facebook, and everybody forgetting that they're there under their real name instead of a pseudonym or something. And they're just flipping out, and you know that Joe so-and-so from 2 towns away is a rabid, angry anti-vaxxer who has regular meltdowns on social media. It's one thing when it's some random person somewhere in the world. It's another thing when it's somebody you could bump into at Walmart. I mean, it's just... So many times, you know, people got so used to the internet and trolling and stuff that they get to a real names network or something newer or more current, and they still act that way for some strange reason. I don't understand it. I'm not going to try to understand it. So it's crazy. But yeah, how many people out there are going to find out the hard way that their little meltdowns are publicly visible on Facebook to people with no accounts, which means you could have like robot crawlers or whatever, background check services or search engines picking up that little feud you had with somebody on, you know, some local news story or whatever. And it shows up in search results for some reason. And how fitting with all those times I've seen Facebook roll out new features with the privacy defaulting all the way down. You know, I still think, you know, one of the reasons I don't get involved with Facebook streaming is because I think Facebook needs to fix the inherent privacy issues of having a Twitch competitor. But it shows real names, and depending on what shows up in the mouse over, you might even see someone lives here, they work there, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, where's the privacy and safety of any sort? Where is any of that? So, and I know the problem with that, I mentioned this before, is that Facebook's design is a little dated. It dates back to the MySpace era when it was like an e-shrine. You made this little personal webpage type thing where you told the world about yourself or whatever. Hi, welcome to my corner on the internet, blah, 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 blah. You had that sort of thing going on, and then it evolved into what we have today with like the YouTube brand channels, what's available on Twitter, Instagram, things along those lines. Not so much of an emphasis on you personally, especially when it's public facing content that the entire world can see. So it's not like being a buried MySpace page or something where you 2 friends from school, 3 friends from college, and 4 people from church, and 2 people from bingo on Wednesday nights or whatever can see your page and nobody else cares. I mean, you're talking about building something public facing, you know, building something of, you know, like that. Very different world, very different attitude, things along those lines. But it's just crazy how people don't think about what it is they're doing because of the way that computery stuff and internet stuff has been for a certain amount of time. But yeah, don't wear your heart on your social media, so to speak. Parody of never, don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Think about, you know, there are some things that you should not respond to because some kind of platform feature like Twitter advanced search, or now, as we know, Facebook's public facing nature of business pages can very easily out something. I mean, even on something that you may not want people to know about yourself. Or maybe you just don't have a very good sense of judgment and stuff, and people find out about it, you're like, ugh, and you're super embarrassed at the minimum if something else doesn't happen because of that. So I mentioned earlier, it's a phase people go through where they think they can do anything on the internet and there's no repercussions. That is false. So that is false. You know, and folks go through that, and depending on how bad you get, that determines how embarrassed you are about that phase you went through for the rest of your life. So don't even bother with that. And keep in mind on how you come across to others, and that features that are publicly available on these platforms can be used to find out details about you that you may try to hide, quite frankly. You know how many Twofaced Twitch streamers I've run into? I'm sick and tired of this. People are one way on stream, cultivating, growing a community and all this crap. And then you go, oh, visit my Twitter for updates. Then you go to their Twitter. You see them starting drama on the posts that they post. Then you go over to media, and then you go to replies, and you see them starting drama with others. And then you go to their likes, and you see that they like stuff that is antagonistic, passive aggressive. It completely sours the persona they're trying to build for themselves when they're all smiley when the cameras are running. You know, here's the stupid part. Again, we talk a lot on this show about, think about the offline equivalent of internet stuff to keep your head on straight. How about, you know, those goofy little things off in the remote corner of your Twitter page somewhere that somebody can find, or they can do a Twitter advanced search to find how you treat others. Something along those lines. In the offline world with the tabloids, you needed a paparazzi or something really weird and really creepy to get some kind of wacko story about a celebrity in some gossip magazine that a lot of us as kids may have seen when, you know, mom took us shopping or whatever. And like, hey, what's this magazine that says that there's an alien baby somewhere in Jamaica? Oh, don't read that. It's the tabloids. It's fake, blah, blah, blah. What about this gossip thing saying that some celebrity's getting divorced? Oh, why do they put this stuff where kids can see it? It used to take, I dare say, some pretty serious effort in the offline world for these things to be a thing. And now people do it to themselves. Visit my Twitter for updates. Yeah, and then you click around and you go to their other social medias or whatnot, and you see the side that they don't show on camera, and you find out the smiley, happy person is this dark, brooding, sneaky, untrustworthy, whatever, on platform B, very, very different than they are on platform A. It's just, folks, the internet is not a tax form. You don't need to fill out every single box. The world doesn't need to know every single opinion you have about every single thing. Especially if you're trying to be some big content creator or something. That depends heavily upon the common ground you can establish with the biggest group of people possible. How are you going to do that when you give people reasons to tune out? Because you bare your soul, so to speak, on the internet. And everybody who will disagree with little details about you that you may never even bring up in your videos or streams, your channel may not even be focused on any of that. It doesn't even need to be relevant, but it is, because you blew the lid on that. It didn't take someone being nosy and digging into your business for you to do that to you. You did it to yourself. It's crazy. It's wild and crazy the way people treat the internet. It's wild and crazy the way people treat social media. And quite frankly, it's wild and crazy that years go by, maybe even decades go by, and people don't learn basic stuff like this. The same mistakes keep getting made over and over and over again. It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Well, if you folks want to be something besides the usual in this area, which I hope you do, I hope this discussion, as meandering and all over the place as it has been. We talked about the pandemic, we talked about religion, we talked about weird stuff people do on the internet, and we brought it all into this somehow. Ugh. Am I trying to be too academic, ladies and gentlemen? Am I thinking for thinking's sake? Am I trying too hard to be like a lot of people I knew were in college, being academic and thinking all over the place about stuff because it's academia? We think about stuff. Now, am I getting too much like that? I don't know. Hey, make the spring make noise. I don't know if that makes it into the microphone past all the noise filters, but don't break the springs on the boom arm. Whatever. I hope that with the stuff that we've talked about with regards to this and this little rude awakening for me and anybody else who wants to be ahead of the game on this, that folks will want to be something besides the usual and not hit this little gotcha of this little thing. Look, bottom line is I wasn't getting involved in giant Facebook fights anyways before I found out about this. It's probably a good thing that I didn't. Hey, how come nobody wants to hire me? Oh, they know me as the guy that's always getting super angry on like news stories and stuff. And, you know, instead of getting banned or whatever, the folks writing the stars like, oh, him again? He always says stupid stuff. And people can mouse over and find out, oh, this person lives there, they work there. It's just like, you think that you'd be a little bit more civil in that kind of environment when you're not hiding behind a username on the internet? I don't know. There are some people in this world that are not going to make any sense. And it's not a good idea to try and figure them out, because you're not going to. The rules of logic don't apply sometimes with these folks. So yeah, folks, keep your head on straight, think critically about stuff, and understand, yeah, sometimes somebody has to be the voice of reason. Because, yeah, that's kind of what I had to do here. Wild and crazy discussion. Let me get back to the darn movie backlogs and planning the redo of the media shelves and stuff like that. And for Pete's sake, I have that camera off that way. That will close the gap between videos and streams if I know what I'm doing. I got to do some kind of thing with that to get used to the new camera and get back to making videos. I got stories to tell with tech stuff too. And I got to figure out what to do about next month. Oh boy. But there's stuff sitting around when there shouldn't be. So time to stop streaming all the time and get to some of that. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by. And never wear your heart on your social media. Nice parody, but pretty darn pertinent.